What a joy. Thank you all for sharing in this moment. Our first baby blessing in our new home. You know, it feels good. Let's just stand and turn to everyone. Turn to someone and say, thank you for being a blessing in my life. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to be able to bless one another. You see, blessings are nothing more than an energy that we hold. Now, in days of old, they used to think that a blessing was a one-time kind of deal, once you sent it out. But we would say that it's really a process. And so every week we like to stand and turn to someone and say, thank you for being a blessing, because some people are blessing our lives and we don't even know it yet. Some people are blessing in our lives and we definitely don't recognize them as blessings in our life yet. So I'm just going to suggest everyone is a blessing. We've been exploring a concept over the last few months, working from a wonderful book by Deepak Chopra, talking about the 7 spiritual laws of success. And it occurs to me I should have probably asked this question at the beginning and not at the end, but I will. And the question is this: are you successful? Now, I've been asking this question for a long time. In fact, I came up with sort of as an icebreaker at one point in some classes I was doing, just to have people interact with each other one-on-one and to say, share with me the secrets of your success. And what I heard over and over with people would say, well, I'm not as successful as I'd like to be. Now, certainly in this enlightened group, no one would say that, but there are those who would, so we'll speak to them today. And what I've discovered about this wonderful thing called success is that we are all successful. Because the definition, one of the definitions for success, is the accomplishment of an aim or purpose. So when we set an intention for ourselves and we accomplish that, we have created success in our lives. So give yourselves a hand. Why? You guys will clap for anything, I swear, you know. But here's the thing. You set for yourself an intention to be here this morning, and look, here you are. What an amazing thing that is, right? But you see, success is simply that. It is setting an intention and accomplishing it. So we all are successful to some degree or another. And yet what I find so often is we walk through life feeling like we're not as successful as we'd like to be. It's one of those things where we can look at what's missing or what we've created. And our tendency culturally is always to look at what's next. Have you noticed that? We accomplish something, but we don't even stop to acknowledge it. So here's what I found out about success personally. Many of you have heard this story, but when I was a young person, about 10 or 12, our family was going through a very difficult period. There was a divorce imminent, a lot of crazy stuff. It was kind of the 60s, and life was a little crazy during that period of time anyways, just as a general rule. And so we reflected the general thing. And so I made some decisions. One of the decisions I made was about my dad. And my dad was a very successful businessman. He was also gone a lot of the time. So much, in fact, I love in the olden days when we didn't talk about stuff for the good of the children. So much, in fact, that my parents were separated for 3 months, and I never knew it. I don't know if that says anything about the dynamic in our home, but, you know, apparently we'd conspired this great game that every Sunday he'd come home in time for dinner before he left on another business trip. Since he was gone about that much anyways, I didn't know. Now, I have no blame here. This is the good news. I've healed. Look at me being all healed up here, right? But for many, many years, I had major issues. Because in my little childlike mind, I made some assumptions. I had a perception about reality. And what do we know about perception and reality? They become our reality. Have you noticed that? What you believe to be true becomes true for you based on your belief. So I remember going through a very difficult period and being so angry at my dad because he was off pursuing money at what I perceived as at the expense of the family. And so I made a profound declaration to a dear friend of mine. And I said, if that's what it takes to be successful, I will never be successful. Now, what we know about science of mind is that a thought combined with emotion planted in our subconscious and held and nurtured there becomes our experience. So fast forward many years as life is evolving and I'm becoming more successful, something would happen. Now, I like that something would happen because it makes it sound like something outside of me happened that thwarted my good. But the truth is, I was there. And so it turns out something that happened was me operating from a unconscious limiting belief that was essentially saying, oh my God, you're about to become successful and you don't want to be the one that inflicts that pain on your family. Right? I mean, this is how our emotions talk. When you listen to them, when you can bring them up to the level of awareness, you go, well, that makes no sense, but that's not where they live, right? So my experience was that somehow I'd always screw it up, right? And it was my unconscious trying to protect me. Isn't that interesting? So I remember being in practitioner training, and all of a sudden this whole thing began to unfold, and I realized that the belief that I had held so many years from that experience was playing out in my life. And I also learned a very valuable, important lesson, that I got to define success for myself. You see, one of the things we do, and I think it's a mistake, is we let other people define for us what is success. We have this image within our own mind that somehow we're supposed to live up to somebody else's expectation. I can't tell you the number of people that I've talked with over the years who struggled with this very thing. I remember a young man who was a very gifted, talented artist. It was in his DNA. It was his soul's passion to express that. And he was the third lawyer in a family of lawyers. Not only was dad a lawyer, but grandpa was a lawyer. And so guess what that belief system was? He actually had a great name. He had a third behind it, which, if you can name your name and be the third and Esquire, it's just like the whole, you're a law firm unto yourself. And so he struggled with that because all of that family conditioning was, you will be a lawyer because that's what we do. And everything inside of himself was about this passion and this desire to express that was within him. The way that finally came to resolution was he decided to follow his heart. And as it turned out, became a very successful artist. But the struggle was not with his art. The struggle was trying to conform to a picture that was not his to conform to. Anybody know this person? Right? How often do we do that? We've inherited some image of who we're supposed to be, of what we're supposed to look like. My dad, I worked for my dad for a number of years. It was a beautiful thing. We really got to heal our relationship. And he'd say to me from time to time, son, someday all this will be yours. And every time he said it, my heart sank. Because there was something within me seeking to be expressed in some other way. It was a fine business. It was a good business. They did stuff. Right? I mean, they sold stuff, and they sold a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of money that was made in the selling of the stuff. But oh no, I had to follow this passion that was within me to be a teacher and to be a healer and to be a minister. And I remember the day when I finally came to say to my dad the big announcement. Not the I'm gay one, we'd already had that conversation. The other big announcement, which is, Dad, I'm leaving the family business to go pursue this dream to become a minister. And I had worked myself into such a tizzy because I thought, surely he's like, good for you. He said, I do this business because I love this business. It has always brought me joy. I've been fortunate to make a lot of money, but it is important to follow your heart. My dad was full of surprise. I'm so glad I got over my image so I could actually know who he was, And so he was a great supporter. He said, do what you love to do. It's a beautiful thing. But you see, I was defining my success by his terms, even though he never asked for it. So often we decide that we should be living up to some image that somebody else holds for us of what is right and perfect for our life. And I'm going to suggest to you today that there is a divine archetype within each one of us that is calling forth for us to be expressed uniquely as only we can. And that we truly never experience success in its fullness until we are willing to listen to that is on our heart to be expressed and to begin expressing it. There's areas of our life that we look at. There's our spiritual life, there's our financial life, there's our social life, our family life, our personal life, which includes our mind and our body and our spirit. And all of those are crying for us to be successful. But success is not in terms of what other people decide it is. It's in terms of our own well-being and our own well-groundedness. I was sharing earlier that I kind of caught that tail end of the hippie thing, right? Some of you may have remembered those days. And the whole hippie era, whatever you want to call that, this revolution that took place, was a very profound mind shift. Because people began to question, is this the life we want? And we said, maybe there's peace and love and joy and harmony at work, and we'll wear beads and dirty clothes, and we'll just love one another and fight against war. Problem with that is that sometimes we end up engaging in the thing we're fighting against. But there was a questioning of reality. And so then we've evolved and we've changed, and it's interesting to me, some of those most hippiest of hippies are now very successful business people. So interesting. You'll see in this minute we're going to sing a song, but I was watching TV not too long ago, I can't remember, and they had a Cadillac commercial on with Led Zeppelin playing in the background. It's like, apparently the hippies are coming of age and have some cash, right? Right? But that whole we're going to overthrow the system until we become the system. And now I'm watching as a younger generation is coming forward, and they have a different set of values. There's really another questioning for this younger, I have a bunch of 20, 30-ish nieces and nephews, and they really are more about sustainability than accumulation. There's a difference, and I'm watching and I'm sensing that for many of us, it's not about more, it's about well-being. It's about living a sustainable life. It's about finding joy through simplicity. It's a wonderful thing. So success is never defined by what others say it is. I would suggest to you success is defined as we listen to our hearts and we operate according to our own sense of well-being. And so what that requires that each of us needs to sit down and define what is success for us. You see, if we're still operating from others' paradigm of what success should be, then we're in this conflict. But when we take the time to define our own life, what brings us joy, what brings us fulfillment, then we can measure our success against that. For our spiritual community, we sat down a couple of years ago and we defined our vision and our mission, and we made some statements about who we are and how we wanted to show up in the world. That we offer a range of dynamic learning opportunities, and that we have many social events, and that we care and nurture for our congregation, and that we provide opportunities for service. And this whole list. And I will tell you, that's the list that I look at to evaluate this ministry. The fact that we've manifested a building is a beautiful and wonderful thing, but it's only in service to the values and the purpose that we hold. It is not the accomplishment of itself. And so we've been very successful as a community. 2 years ago, we started talking about this idea. We drew it out. We were bold enough to draw it out and say, it looks like this. And we prayed around it, and we visioned around it, and we worked around it. We did the things necessary to bring it into being, so that today we're sitting in what was an idea 2 years ago. Because that's how life works. There's a program that I have taught called On Course, and in that program, it talks about there's a cycle of accomplishment. And the cycle is this: vision, action, completion, and celebration. Very simple. You get the idea, you do the things necessary, and at some point you have the outpicturing of the idea. But there's also another cycle, and that cycle is called the cycle of incompletion. And that cycle looks like fantasy. Wouldn't it be great if I won the lottery? Right? And then activity, doing stuff. Not the stuff that brings you to the goal, just stuff, right? And then the stories we tell about why it didn't happen. We've all done both cycles, right? But the difference is when we have vision and then we take action, we do the things necessary to bring that into being. Now we are into action, and at some point we will have completion, and then we should celebrate. I just had this conversation this week with our staff, because I realized as I looked around, they looked about as ragged as I was. We had just gone through an amazing thing to get from where we were into here. And our staff is amazing. And I said, it's so important, because we got here, and then it was like we pulled out the list of all the things that need to happen here, and who's going to organize, and who's going to make that happen, and who's going to market, blah, 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 blah. They said, I had this revelation in talking to a friend of mine who's experiencing some burnout in ministry, that we needed to stop. We needed to stop and say, wait a minute. We just completed something magnificent. Can we have a moment of celebration around this? You see, yes, I know. But we do this in our culture particularly. You're only as good as what you did yesterday, right? And so it's so much value to stop when you've accomplished something and say, yes, I did this. I set the intention, I moved into action, and I brought it into being. Yay us. So on October 18th, we're having a dedication ceremony. And it is to celebrate what we have co-created together. We're inviting friends and other ministers and other communities in to have a service, and it'll be lovely. And Michael Gott, who I've been working on for 3 years to get him here, is coming. And it's going to be an amazing and lovely and wonderful event. So it's to celebrate what we have done, even as we rededicate ourselves to the real work that lies in front of us, of changing people's lives, of being a powerful influence for good, of being more peaceful and loving and joy and abundant in our lives. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, I think you're very successful. Each one of you has created something in your life. And my invitation to you is to own it, is to own what you have created. Are you done yet? No. Are you breathing? Yes. So that tells me you're not done, right? Because we're never done. We're always evolving beings. But we can celebrate, enjoy what we have accomplished, and I would encourage us to do that, to celebrate what you have accomplished in your life, what you have brought forth, what you have manifested so far. And then, having celebrated that, then visit the vision of what's next. Who am I being called to be? What brings me joy and fulfillment? What would make my life, when it's all said and done, be a testament to who I want it to be? Don't forget to celebrate what you've done. And don't be afraid to be exactly who you are. Let us pray. As we take this moment to simply breathe into that awareness of the ever-present reality of pure spirit, this one life that is forever and ever seeking its self-expression in, through, and as all creation, we open our hearts and our minds this day to this one life breathing us, breathing through us. That is the very breath that we breathe. And I know that by its very nature it is wholeness and harmony and love and joy and beauty. And even as we took a moment to recognize the inherent divinity of this one child, I take this moment to recognize the inherent divinity of each of us gathered here. To realize that it is our privilege to give birth to the divine within us. And so I speak the truth this day as I recognize wholeness, revealing itself as health, as well-being, as vitality. I recognize and know this divine presence as abundance, joyously and generously flowing through us, back to us. I know that love is the only reality. And so we surrender anything unlike perfect love. We joyously and generously forgive ourselves and those who we perceived have harmed us, that we might stand in the truth in the divine light, that we might recognize the reality of unconditional love as the only reality. We allow our lives to be healed and touched and transformed through the power of this love. We are made whole through the recognition of the one life as our life. And so we know that we are blessed. We give thanks for the many blessings, those seen and those yet to be realized. And from that place, we extend a blessing. We bless this spiritual community that we might be a shining light of divine love and of spiritual truth. We extend a blessing from this place to bless our brothers and sisters around the planet. We're simply accepting a planet at peace and knowing a world that works for everyone. As always, we extend a blessing to all priests, rabbis, ministers, and teachers of every faith. For we know there are many pathways to the divine. We choose to honor and celebrate them all. And so in this place of awareness, of peace, we simply give thanks. And as I release this word, I know it is acted upon by a universal intelligence to bring forth the highest good for all concerned. In joy and gratitude, then, I simply allow it to be so. As together we say, and so it is.
So it is.